Hi everyone, this is FIDE Master Dennis Monokroussos, and today we're going to take a look at opening theory, but we're going to do so in a rather unusual way. The way we're going to do it is by looking at a couple of king and pawn endings. So we'll begin here. Well, okay, I want to say a couple things. So first, we'll look at these king and pawn endings, but then we're going to come back and go through the games or the variations a second time, and we'll draw a further moral from this as well. So I want to begin with an example that I got from the latest New in Chess yearbook. I think it's issue 96, at least as of this recording. And I'll have some things to say that are a little bit different later on, but in this first go-round, this will be purely analysis from that publication. The second one will come from, it's builds off of some analysis from Chris Ward in chesspublishing.com. Okay, so having given the people their due credit, let's take a look at the variations. So this first one is in the two knights in the Canal variation, named after Esteban Canal, who I think flourished as a player in the 1920s and 30s. So I have a little bit of experience with this this ending, though not as far as this goes, what we're going to see. Okay, so in this position, I wanted to mention a little move order finesse or mild issue, and really it's a purely transpositional possibility. The only thing you have to decide if you're playing black in this line is if you think you're a faster player or a slower player. So if you're a faster player, you should play king to d7 and get to the position you want to move sooner. If you want to give yourself some extra time on the clock, you should do it this way. So that way it takes a move longer and you're one move closer to the time control. Anyway, it's the same thing either way. Okay, so we reach this position. This is very, very well known. I'm not sure how ancient it is, but it's been known for, well, I've known about it for well over a decade, and I'm sure it goes back way before that as well. So if it was black's move here, knight to e5 check, trading knights, then playing c5, c4, at least going for that, might give him some advantage. Well, probably white plays c4 first. But anyway, black would have no problems whatsoever if he could play knight to e5 here, but it's white's move, and white has a little trick. So you might want to see if you can figure out what that little trick is before I show you. Well, here it is. Knight takes d4. So the point is, after knight takes d4, c4 check, king e5, f4 check, the king is forced away from the knight, and white regains the piece. Now, black can play bishop takes f4, and then we reach this king and pawn ending, as advertised. And this has been known, again, for over a decade. I remember seeing this endgame mentioned and discussed initially in a New in Chess yearbook, I think from the late 1990s. I don't remember exactly what year, but it goes back to that point somewhere. And, well, it turns out, it seems, that white does win this king and pawn ending by force. So that was the conclusion drawn and discussed in this latest New in Chess yearbook. So I'm not going to present all of the variations, of course, but I will show some of the basic ideas. Okay, so king to d5, this is critical. If black plays king f5 now, trying to prevent white's king from coming in through e6, white plays b4, and will eventually break up black's queenside pawns enough for his king to get in and win anyway. Okay, a second try for black would be to counterattack with g5, but white is going to be just a bit too fast. So here's a variation where both sides queen, but the problem is that white will win the queen ending. So the a-pawn is a goner, and, well, with the two extra pawns, white will win. Okay, going back here, we've discussed briefly both king to f5 and b4. A third possibility, and this leads to the prettiest variation, is king to e3. Now king to e6. And here, okay, in the yearbook, they discuss this in much greater detail. Probably a lot of it you could work out with your computer, too, or on your own if you're extremely ambitious. But anyway, they look at king to f2, which loses, well, all the moves lose, c5, c6, a5, and then g5. And I'll show you the main variation with this, which is really very nice. c5. Okay, here if king to f2, g4 is winning. c6, this is the main move. And now, funny little switchback. So king to f5. Well, it's not really a switchback technically because it's not going back to where it was, but it's going back from the 6th rank back to the 5th rank and away from the queen side, kind of paradoxically going to the king side instead. So the main variation continues king to f2, g4, king f3, b4, king g2, king g6. Now, if black takes the h-pawn, white grabs both kingside pawns. So king to h3 is a nice try. And now white plays king h5. And here we have, at least with respect to the king side, a mutual Zugzwang. If the black king moves, he loses both pawns. If the white king moves, well, if he takes on h6, black plays king takes g4, and he's okay over there. So it's going to come down to the queen side and who wins the tempo battle. Well, if black plays a6, then a3 or a4 will win. If b6, white plays b5, or plays c takes b6. So we might as well try b5 with the idea that if a3, then a6 is great for black. But c takes b6, a takes b6, a4. And now the final tricky point, the final nice point of this, is that after c5, okay, white plays a5, black plays b takes a5, and now it might seem like this is going to be a draw, that there's no way for white to win this. But there is. b5. So we don't go to the left, we don't go to the right, we go straight ahead. And the point, as you've no doubt figured out by this moment, is that after both sides queen, white has queen to g3 mate. So a beautiful piece of analysis by, I'm going to remember who it's by. I think actually several people have come up with this independently. But anyway, this puts black out of business in this king and pawn ending. Okay, well here's the next example. This is, as I said, in the, well, okay, now I don't remember if I said what variation it was from. It was, it's based on some work by Chris Ward in chesspublishing.com, but I'm going to go beyond what he says. Okay, so it's in the Dragon, which is what Ward is a great specialist in. Okay, so we have the classic main line here, the Yugoslav attack. And then instead of knight to e5, black goes for this somewhat newfangled Topalov variation. Okay, it's not that new anymore, but it's still comparatively new. Okay, there are a number of ways we can reach the position we're going to see here in a moment. Okay, so this position can arise via a number of move orders. The differences between the different move orders isn't really so important at this point. What matters is what we're going to see. Okay, so takes and takes. And now here white's best try seems to be king to d2. Now the main move here is rook to c5, and then maybe white's best try is king to e3. But Ward suggests in this analysis of his a very interesting move. I'm a little bit surprised if it works, but it does seem interesting. Rook takes c2 check. Okay, bishop takes c2, b3, queen c3, takes, bishop takes c2. And Ward suggests that this line is probably a draw. And for example, one of the variations he gives goes like this. Rook takes e7, bishop to g6, rook e4. Okay, it's the only way to stop b2 and b1 queen from winning a full rook. So this is white's only defense. And Ward stops here, and presumably it's a draw. At least that's the clear implication of what he's saying. So those of you who get chesspublishing.com, you can look this up in his notes to the 2010 game Pavlovich-Roganovich, which didn't go this way at all. So it's not that you're going to see this position in any games in your database. It's just that's the game where his annotations reach this position. But it's perhaps a little bit of a, might seem at least like a premature place to stop the analysis, because look, white has king to c2. All right, he's just going to pick up this pawn, and after king f6, rook takes b2, and all right, let's continue naturally here. Takes, king e5. Well, black is regaining the pawn, and it seems at first that he should actually be in very good shape. I mean, he's got this very active king, and material is equal, so he should be all right. But in fact, white is winning this ending. So c4 and king c3. And it doesn't matter whether black plays passively or actively, he loses. Although one of the variations is quite interesting and very close. So if he plays passively, it's quite easy. Well, I should say the idea. White's basic idea is simply to play king to b4, king to b5, and c5. All right, well, this will work. Well, this works actually against everything that black does. So, for instance, if king e5, trying to go passive, trying to get back in time, it doesn't matter. Well, here we don't play c5 to c5. We play king to c6. Now, black has nothing better than to try to push the pawns for counterplay, but white's just too fast. Okay, c5. If d takes c5, then king c7, followed by d6, 7, 8, queen, winning. And if h4, once again, king c7 is a nice, accurate move that forces promotion in 3 more moves. Well, I guess 4 more moves. Black can play h3 and delay it by a move, but you get the point. The d6, 7, 8 idea is unstoppable. All right. Now, the more interesting variation involves black going for counterplay with his pawns and just leaving the queen side alone. I mean, white can't play c5 until his king's on b5, so it gives black a few moments here. So f5, king b4. Now, again, if black tries to resist, it's useless. King to d4, king b5. Black can't make any further progress on the queen side, and after f4, c5 is an easy winner. Okay, so f4, and now h5. Now, white to move, what do you do here? Well, one interesting line that doesn't win, but maybe you have some practical chances, is king to c6. So h4, king takes d6, h3, takes, f3, king e7. And black is queening first, but the funny thing is that after d7, there's no way for him to stop white from promoting. Unfortunately for white, after queen takes c4, d8, queen at the table-based draw, maybe black can even pick up the pawn with some series of checks. So I'm not sure if white really has practical chances or not. I haven't worked out whether black can grab the pawn or not by force, but in any case, it's objectively a draw at least. So king c6 is not best. Okay, so c5 is the best move. h4, and now white has to play accurately here. So white can win in this position, believe it or not. See if you can figure out how. Well, the answer is not c takes d6. So here we get an ending that's drawn, at least again by the table base. No doubt white can give black some practical problems, but objectively speaking, this ending is a draw. However, with this neat little finesse with c6, white is winning. h3 takes, f3, both sides queen, and then the punchline, queen c4 check, trades queens and wins the game. Okay, so 43 moves here, and it's all to some extent relevant. It's all at least possible theory. This could very, very easily happen in a game with someone who also knows this ward idea. All right. Well, now, having presented these two very interesting pawn endings that can result from lines that are reasonably well known, now I want to go back and draw some second conclusions about all this. So let's again go back to this two knights ending. We'll go back to this key position here after knight takes d4. Now, in that article, a number of alternatives are very briefly mentioned, but I think they're quite important. So one is knight to e5 check, followed by a5. The idea is, of course, to play bishop to b4 check. And maybe this could even be considered after a3 as well. Okay, but I think the most important line, okay, I'll show you a second line that I don't think is so great that they give as a possible alternative. Okay, so after king e5, f4, king f5, king takes, there's g5. All right, now this may draw as well as what we're going to look at, but it's quite complicated. But I think the best way to handle this after c4 is king to e6. So king takes d4, bishop e5 check, and bishop takes b2. So this is much, much easier. And, okay, black needs to have a little bit of accuracy here, but this really should put the whole line out of business. So, for instance, well, okay, let's discuss this position a little bit. Material is even again. White is, of course, slightly better. His king is a touch more active, and his majority is cleaner. So it's, at least it's a little bit easier for him to make a passed pawn with his majority. But really, these two very small advantages aren't enough, and as we'll see, black can draw pretty easily. So two lines here, f4 and g4. Okay, if f4, then a6 and b5. Okay, so black is, of course, making his majority count as quickly as possible. All right, and here, okay, if king to d5, then c4, threatening c3, c2, c1. Okay, so the idea of this trick is that if c3, then maybe bishop to e5, although the bishop to a1 response might be sufficient. But okay, king e7, a4, and this is an equal position. It's a pretty easy draw, frankly. Okay, there's a game Hakat. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly at all. Against Huey, might be butchering that one too, from Edmonton in 2000. So that game went g5, trades, and okay, both sides are basically stuck, and the draw was agreed here. Okay, second try is with g4. All right, against this, there's a game that went b6. Okay, now, if h4, again a6, and c6. So, once again, black is going to get his queenside majority going. He'll make a passed pawn over there, and then he can very easily hold on the king side. So there's really nothing for white to do. After g5, the game Sigurd against Boja or Boja from the Danish Championship in 2009 was agreed drawn here. The best way to prove it, or that the position is a draw, is by trading and playing bishop to c1. So, dead equal. Okay, instead of h4, white could also try f4. And again, black has any number of ways to prove equality here. So, c6, for instance. And same thing, black creates a passed pawn on the queen side. Now, white can play c5 to try to keep a little bit of action over there, so his king might be able to someday get into d6. But white can always, or black can always just hold here. Okay, bishop to c1, very nice little finesse. So that on king to e7, e5, he plays king e7, and white's king side is stymied, and white can make no progress on the queen side either. Okay, another way to play instead of c6, which as we saw at least gives black a little bit of a vulnerability, is to play a6. And okay, well now c6 is alright. And again, black has no real problems here. If f6, then takes, and a4, and black's queenside pawns are sufficiently fast, while here, again, white is not making any progress. Black always has bishop to b2 check, worst comes to worst, to hold down the kingside fort. Okay, so the moral then of this story, of this first two knights variation, is that black doesn't need to go into this king and pawn ending. So it's fascinating, and it's very intricate, and who knows, maybe it's at least theoretically possible that some very clever analyst will find a way for black to miraculously save that king and pawn ending. But there's just no need to go for it. This bishop ending with king to e6 and bishop takes b2 is just so much simpler that heading down this path is simply really just a waste of time. There's no reason for black to go into this. So John Nunn once famously had this phrase, "Don't analyze unnecessary tactics." Well, we can say about this, we shouldn't analyze unnecessary king and pawn endings either. So rather than looking into whether a position like this is a draw or a white win, we should instead look for the simpler ending, the bishop ending, because with the bishops on, there's a lot more forgiveness. In a king and pawn ending, if it's lost, you're just dead. I mean, if you're worse, there's often just no way at all of remedying your position. Whereas with the bishops, you have many more defensive resources. Okay, likewise, in the second example, in this Topalov dragon, again, rook takes c2 is not necessary, rook c5 is playable, but even if we go into this variation, okay, from here, after king to c2, there's simply no need to head for the pawn ending. We can just play rook to e8. Very, very simple. Okay, if white plays rook to e1, well, then he's passive, and we can go for play. We could just play rook to b8 as well. So on this, rook to b8, let's say king to b1. Rook to b1 would just repeat. So rook to b1, rook e8, and we're back where we started from. And if king to b1, well, now we activate the king with king to f6. And the king will go to e5. It'll be great there. Maybe we'll play rook to g8 as well next. That could be coming. Another idea might be rook to b3. So this is possible too. In fact, I kind of like this one a little bit better. So yeah, black has no problems here. All right, likewise, if king to d3, rook to b8, and white's making no progress. Black will play king f6, king e5 next. So again, the king and pawn ending is fascinating, but absolutely pointless. Black can draw quite easily by leaving the rooks on the board. One thing to note, though, is that some accuracy is required. After king f6, rook takes b2. Here, maybe black can avoid losing with rook to g8. I mean, maybe he's still holding on, but it's already a bit troublesome. So king to d3, and now, for instance, if king e5, rook b7, check, and rook takes g2. This position is difficult for black. He's probably losing here. So just one variation and then d6, and the pawn is quite dangerous. But maybe black can survive back here with rook to g4. I'm not sure if he can or not, but maybe. At any rate, this should be avoided. So I think the timing is important, that at the beginning of this ending here, after king c2, rook e8 is definitely the right way to go. And here white has no real winning chances to speak of. So a very interesting bit of analysis here, I think, that Ward came up with. But yeah, you've got to be careful. Don't head down the primrose path into this king and pawn ending, because it's a loser. So you have to see that little trick later on, that little finesse. But you know, once it's there, that reveals it as a loss. So the point is, okay, even if maybe again there's some miracle for black, black is living very, very dangerously by handling the endgame in this way. Whereas going for the rook ending, remember the old saw that all rook endings are drawn. If you go this way, the draw is quite easy. So the second moral again is, or the first moral is that studying opening theory can involve even studying king and pawn endings, but we don't want to analyze unnecessary king and pawn endings. Sometimes there's a perfectly simple and legitimate, and in this case superior, way to avoid the pawn ending. So hope you enjoyed this and learned something about it. And you know, I certainly hope that this serves, let's say, as a caution. You know, you should again be aware of your endings, especially as they relate to opening theory. But you know, certainly be careful in them. All right, that'll conclude the show. And thanks a lot. See you next week. Bye bye.